identify where we convert higher than category average, and then we want to go to the search term impression share report and look at where we're currently ranked, like what's our impression share rank for that particular term. Obviously, if it's a new product, impression rank 10, for example, and we've got 100,000 impressions, we can then say our impression share at impression rank 10 is, let's keep the numbers nice and round, 1%. If that's 1%, then we can work out what 100% of all the available impressions are. It would be 100 times our 100,000, right? Once we've got that total number, we can then say, all right, we kind of know from the data that we've pulled from all of our accounts that if you're ranked in the top, above the fold, you're typically looking at 10 to 20% of the impression share. So if we use 20% as an example, we know that we need 20 times more impressions than we're currently getting. We're at 1% and we want 20%. So now we can work out what that's going to equate to in total ad spend to achieve that.
Well, hello everyone, welcome back. I'm really excited to dig into this topic. We're going to be going over ranking strategy when it comes to Amazon, specifically using advertising, how the market has shifted, how it used to be, and then also some tips and strategies for you to be able to pick the best search terms that have good ranking potential. I'm really excited to have on Darrell Paterson. He is from Sponsored Profit. You all are an advertising agency.
We are, correct? Yeah, in the UK.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love for you to just quickly introduce yourself, give a little bit about you all and what it is that you do.
Yeah, sure. I'm Darrell Paterson. I started selling on Amazon back in 2013, exited my brand in 2018, and since then, this is all I've done is PPC. It's what started out helping a few friends, pretty common story, just helping out a few friends here and there, and then those few friends kind of turned into a few more, and it just became... it just kind of presented itself as a business opportunity, and we run with it, and here we are 5 years later.
That's awesome. It seems like that's a lot of people's origin stories. I was like, I started being helpful. More people asked about it, and you're like, I guess, this is good. I have the skills and can definitely help. So then you just lean into that.
Definitely.
It's awesome. Yeah, I love that you brought up this topic on ranking. I feel like there's a lot of brands out there, even on maybe older legacy products that have kind of died off. This idea of ranking products, getting more placements, on search pages, not losing market share. It's definitely a hot topic as more competition moves into the space. Things get way more competitive. Maybe if you've been sleeping on things for a little while, it's very easy to fall off those search pages. So I know that this is a topic that's really front and center on a lot of brands' minds these days.
Yeah, I think just to kind of build a bit of backstory here, I think a lot of this has come from the changes in TOS. So 2020, I believe it was, November, when they kind of dropped the bombshell that any kind of rank manipulation, so giveaways and rebates and all that kind of stuff, was now completely against TOS. And that was a great way of ranking in the good old days, and I personally used it with my own brand. But it kind of left a big gaping hole. And essentially, before we started recording, it's a lot of our brands kind of, when we speak to them about what is their ranking strategy when they come to us, and they're like, we haven't got one. We haven't had one since that change. So I think it's just a big kind of unspoken. I don't hear many people talking about this topic, certainly since those TOS updates. So I thought it'd be pretty cool to dig in and talk about what we can do these days and how we can use that to rank our product.
Yeah, I agree. That was a definite bombshell in the Amazon community when that dropped. And there were people who had spoken out for a while before saying, these giveaways, if you really read terms of service, it doesn't really sound like it is above board, but it's kind of a gray hat, and everyone did it, and it definitely 100% worked. Correct me if I'm wrong, in a way, it was almost as if they clarified terms of service more than actually creating massive changes to it, but definitely came out and said, like, this is manipulation.
Any kind of manipulation
against terms
is
of
against
service.
So.
No,
we knew that. We kind of knew that, right?
That is no longer on the table.
We bent the rules a little.
Yeah, it's one of those, we kind of knew, and it's some people, like, they use certain inserts at these point. It technically, like, there is a lot of ways to skirt the line. Again, best to play above board regardless, because, eventually it could come back. There was a lot of people who had, when they found all, like, the Facebook groups with the giveaways, had, like, massive amounts of reviews deleted from the listings. Lots of people got in trouble, big trouble, like prosecution level trouble.
I think there was like
these
Yeah, it
groups.
was like
Um,
10,000 Facebook groups or something. I read at one point that had been included in
yeah.
the lawsuit. Yeah,
Yeah, it was intense, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, they've been paying attention. They just haven't gone around to making moves because you don't find those
yeah.
groups overnight. Like it's obviously they were paying attention. It's almost in some ways again stay above board because not that they don't know, it's just their time and effort isn't maybe best spent there at this point. But Amazon knows a lot more than you think, most likely.
It all kind of makes sense as well, right? If you look at it from Amazon's all about the customer, right? That's the only thing that's not the only thing, but that's the most important thing is that the customer has a great experience. From a customer's perspective, if we're out there doing mass giveaways and ranking a inferior product to the top of page one, the customer's not going to be happy. That's not going to be a good experience. So I think if you look at everything from that lens, what they're doing, yes, it's a little difficult and it hurt a lot of people, but at the end of the day, it's better for the platform and ultimately it's going to be better for real brands that want to grow a proper business in the long term.
No, absolutely. Yeah, so when all of this went down, a lot of people went, well, I guess I gotta turn to Amazon advertising because people were still using Amazon advertising kind of in tandem with these giveaways in a lot of places. And there was people who would, run a certain ad campaign and then also couple that with the giveaway. Obviously, the expenses on that were a lot higher. That was a really good way to do it as well. So when that pivoted, I do find it interesting that not the one distinction, but a very large distinction when it comes to Amazon advertising is you can influence organic visibility through ads, which in a lot of platforms isn't possible anymore. Like Google obviously took that away because they realized like, well, this is not in our best interest to have these things overlap. Amazon has not taken that away. I don't ever see them taking that away because I think the ranking algorithm is still very much based on how you convert. Are you making orders? So you can't, even if you're willing, again, kind of do a pay to play with ranking through ads, you can't skirt a poor conversion rate. If you convert bad, there's nothing you can do about it other than fix the product and make sure that you have something that the market actually wants to buy. They do have things in place where, again, you can kind of gain that initial traction, but then it's up to the product and how the shopper base is going to interact with it to actually determine whether or not you're going to rank or sustain ranking.
And reviews and stuff as well, right? I think it's one we find products that even old products that have been around for years that just need a bit of a reboot, where they've dropped off ranking. We find that those products are way easier to get back to the top of the search results than a product that's maybe had a few bad reviews. They've dropped to 4 stars or 4.1, and that becomes so much more difficult and therefore more expensive to get those products to the same position. I think it's again it comes down to conversion, right? If they've got loads of good solid 5-star reviews and they've got a higher review count than their average competitor, they're going to convert better. That's the consistent piece, isn't it? In all of these little different scenarios, it's the conversion rate.
Absolutely. So I know we kind of teased it in the beginning, but how do you all go about figuring out launch strategy? Okay, we know that PPC is a great option on platform ads. How do you go about building those or determining how you would build that out?
Again, it's slightly different if it's a brand new product and we don't have much data on it, which we typically want to run some PPC for at least a week or two just to gather some data. But then I think in both scenarios, we find that the release of the search query performance dashboard, whatever you call it, in brand analytics, has really been a game changer because we've never had that combined paid and organic sales data, and the fact that it's only from search results, right? So all these sales that we might make, on product pages and other placements, the fact that that's excluded, so we're literally looking at page one and what's available there. That was the first real big aha moment when they released that. But then the fact that they also give you the total purchases for each, at the search term level. So now we can look at that and say, all right, well, if we're working backwards slightly and you look at where's all the traffic, and we know, I think it's PackView released a metric, didn't they? End of last year, it was like something like 72% of all clicks or something on page one come above the fold, which is massive. And it's not surprising because your average shopper doesn't know that the headline search ad is an ad and the first 4 placements are sponsored. They don't care, right? They look the same. So it makes sense. If you were to work that back into, say, those 8 placements above the fold, if that's 70%, I'm just using 80% as another round number. But if you said like almost 10% for each placement, when you start to really look into purchase share, when you're in one of those placements, it typically comes out to approximately 10 to 20%, right? And that's what we found looking looking at all our accounts. And the same with the search term impression share report. If we're the number one impression rank, it's typically around 20, sometimes a bit higher for branded search, but typically around 10 to 20%. So once we've got that data, we can then reverse engineer how many units we're probably going to need to shift in order to get to that same kind of level. It's just a case of taking the target search terms total sales and the total clicks, and we can calculate the category average conversion rate for that search term. And then we can calculate ours. And if we're strong, if we're higher than average, then that's going to be a good candidate to go at. If we're way below average, it's probably one that we're not ready to lean on. Then the second step would be to look at the search term impression share report and say, all right, well, we're actually already impression rank 1, so we're not going to be able to move the needle on this. Mm-hmm. So one with impression rank 10. And we can also then, again, reverse engineer what that's going to look like in terms of clicks to achieve our target orders. And we've also got the cost per click. We've also got our impression rank, right? So we can now calculate how much it's going to cost. And then that's a conversation to have with our partners. This is the keywords you want to launch on. This is realistically what budget's going to have to be in order to do that. I had one example a couple of months ago when I was on a call, and they wanted to rank for a particular keyword, which was like ridiculous volume. It was like $4,500 a day daily budget, like for that one search term, and they were like, "That's just ridiculous." Like they obviously they didn't want to spend it. And I'm like, "Well, that's fine. You can put $500 a day on it, but you're going to run out of budget at 10 o'clock every morning, and you're not going to get the volume that you need to be able to push the rank." And having that information now at our fingertips that we've never had just makes these conversations so much easier, and it's purely data driven. We're not just picking a search term that we would like to rank for. This search term's got tons of search volume, because there's a massive difference, right? We see it again with using the search query performance, where the purchase rate, on a really broad term, it might have tons of impressions and tons of search volume, but the purchase rate's tiny because it's a browsing type keyword, not a buying type keyword. And I think that additional layer of granularity, we can pretty much be never be 100% confident because it's Amazon, right? But we can certainly have a lot more confidence that the keywords that we're targeting are going to be able to A, get ranked, and B, stick that ranking once we start to dial back on the ad spend.
Those are great. I probably love to pick your brain a little bit more. I know you touched on the calculations you're using to define like how expensive things are. I can guarantee the audience is probably going to go back and watch that, so I'll probably ask you to maybe go through some of the exact calculations if you don't mind sharing some of your secret sauce. But yeah, I 100% am in agreement with you on using search query reports, specifically like you said, to determine where do we convert better versus the competition, because we kind of talked about that in the beginning, how conversion rate plays huge part in rankings, but then also of course order velocity on things. And that's how the ads influence the ranking, is they add to, the order velocity on a specific keyword, which is great. So we can kind of like add to that total pot, but then you want your organic to be able to pick up. And that's why, like you said, search query is phenomenal, because you pointed out it combines the ads with the organic and then also gives it to you against the competition, which is phenomenal. I don't know about you, but questions that I got all the time were, hey, like, how are we doing versus the competition? What's my competition doing? Like, what's the market look like? Those are all the questions that we, to be frank, didn't have really good ways to figure them out. We can kind of infer things and look at things and sort of look at the market, and this is first party data. So Amazon's like, this is exactly what it is, here's how you're stacking up, and then you can go through and you can look at it and say, okay, I'm doing better than competition here, not so great here. And like you were saying, if you're going to push to rank on something, at some point, sometimes like you're saying, maybe spending thousands of dollars a day isn't sustainable for an entire year, but maybe you could do that for a month. Maybe that was feasible for the brand. So the question is, okay, so can we kind of get there in a month, and then when we pull back, are we just going to slip off the page again? Is that kind of going to be wasted ad spend? And like you said, in someone, like, nothing is ever 100%. If we're looking at the conversion rates today and we're pushing, like, oh my goodness, we're better, and then you get a bunch of 2-star reviews and your review rating drops, so conversion rate drops, so therefore the number, I always say the math works out. The problem is the math is built on things that are variable, and that's why there's so much, I guess, uncertainty when it comes around this, because you can build out the forecast models. That part's not hard, it's just math. But the hard part is knowing, okay, so 2 months from now, is this going to be my conversion rate, or ideally I'm going to have better, but hopefully I don't have worse.
I think the brand metric metrics tab as well. At least gives us that other level of insight, right? And I think that's, you saying new product launches, that's probably one of the first places we'd look for those newer products anyway. Like, what is the category average conversion rate? And then as soon as we turn on some ads, even just to try and gather some data, we can benchmark ourselves against that as a product. And if the category conversion is 20% and we're at 10%, we probably want to do some more work on the listing and get some reviews and stuff before we start getting aggressive with any kind of launch strategy. I know you have you still have like the honeymoon period, those first few weeks, which still seems to be valid for new products. But if you're launching on the wrong keywords, that you're not going to stick it after the launch, then it's kind of, like I said, a bit of a waste of ad spend if we can't stick that at that position once we start to dial things back. So yeah, I think that insight into the category from the outset, just through brand metrics, is great. But then, like I said, the search query dashboard then gives us that much more granular level at the search term level, which then allows us to kind of pick and choose which ones are most likely to stick.
Yeah, no, I think that absolutely 100%, especially through the brand metrics tab, like you're saying, looking at it gives you category average, things like conversion rate, how are you stocking up against the competition. If you just launched, you may not have much conversion rate, but at least you can know what's the category average.
At least you've got a benchmark to aim for, right?
Yeah, at least you have some idea, which
because it varies massively, right? I think if you look at apparel or baby products is another one. Anything that's kind of any sort of taste or color or
style, shapes,
anything,
colors,
they can be tiny. I've seen one the other day. It was like 2.2% was like the category average, and I'm like, wow. But then that's even more important, then, right? Especially if it's a competitive category, because your cost per clicks can be significant these days, and if we're only converting at 2%, I mean, we've really got to be smart with the keywords that we go after.
That's a whole lot of clicks. I always find that if you are in a space with a very high cost per click, you can make up a lot if you have a really great conversion rate. Because again, it takes less clicks for you to be able to make that order, and then less clicks translates to less ad spend. So you can, if you have a really poor conversion rate and a really competitive market with insanely high cost per clicks, and you have a low price point, those are honestly sometimes near impossible to get profitable at all, which is definitely difficult.
The opposite's true as well, right? We see some categories that they've got 50-60% conversion rates, which seems ridiculous, but it's Amazon, right? It's totally different. When brands come to us aren't Amazon native brands, they're D2C brands that are expecting a 2% conversion rate because that's what they're used to on their website, and then they come to Amazon and they're getting 25-30%, and it blows their mind. It's a very different platform to D2C.
Yeah. Do you mind digging into, again, I know you brushed over it, but that looking at forecast, obviously we said conversion rate, but then also you said forecasting the budget, because that's a big thing that I talk about a lot, is taking a look at what you can afford before you launch. Because if you go through, like you said, thankfully you were able to do the math for the client and say, hey, look, it's going to cost us thousands. If they said, hey, I have 500 a day, that's the max I can go, well, then what we often do is we'll take whatever the budgets are and then backtrack that into, these are more significant keywords that we actually probably have the budget to be able to, like you said, run all day, because you need that order volume to be able to rank, or you're kind of just spinning your wheels. It's not that it's completely wasted ad spend, but if the goal is to rank, then you really just want to maximize that budget across the 24-hour period.
Running out at 10, 11 o'clock every morning it's great that velocity and volume during that time, but the rest of the day it's kind of, it can work for a long period of time, but I think it's definitely more effective if we can keep that momentum going.
Yeah, and I have seen that work for some, because we do run that strategy sometimes, capping budgets and just having high bids to get top of search. The factor whether that will work or not, I find, is the order velocity you're getting. So if the ads are getting shut off and your visibility is not there, if you're nowhere on page 1, page 2, anywhere, you're not getting those organic orders to kind of add to the pot and the order volume and then be able to help sustain rank. The products that I've seen this work okay on have been the ones that already have some ranking, so they have some visibility. So when
might be position 10 or 12 on page 1 or something.
You're not completely out of the market whatsoever. You still have some visibility. It is a test and see sort of scenario, but if you are completely not anywhere within the first couple of pages, again, depending on what the search market looks like, certain searches, people are like, hey, I just want it right now. I don't care if you have more like stylized options. Sometimes they're searching lower down on the page because they want that specific style or shape of clothing or whatever it is they're looking for. So it can depend. But yeah, I would agree with you. If your goal is to rank, you want to make sure you have a budget big enough that you're going to get the visibility and the order volumes you need.
So yeah, I think from going to the search term impression share report now, we've used the search query performance to identify where we convert higher than category average, and then we want to go to the search term impression share report and look at where we're currently ranked, like what's our impression share rank for that particular term. Obviously, if it's a new product and we don't have that data, we need to run some ads and see how much, calculate our top of search cost per click. Maybe not position one, but certainly in that top row, what does that look like? Because that's obviously plays a big part. What's our conversion rate at that position? Then we can kind of say, all right, well, if we're impression rank 10, for example, and we've got 100,000 impressions, we can then say our impression share at impression rank 10 is, let's keep the numbers nice and round, 1%. If that's 1%, then we can work out what 100% of all the available impressions are. So it would be 100 times our 100,000, right? So once we've got that total number, we can then say, all right, we kind of know from the data that we've pulled from all of our accounts that if you're ranked in the top, above the fold, you're typically looking at 10 to 20% of the impression share. So if we use 20% as the example, we know that we need 20 times more impressions than we're currently getting. We're at 1% and we want 20%. So now we can work out what that's going to equate to in total ad spend to achieve that.
Yeah, because you're looking at your cost per click. So you're figuring if you have percentage of impression share. Are you also looking out to determine how many clicks? Are you looking at the click-through rate top of search?
Yeah. We need that kind of benchmark data at the top of page one, because in the search impression share report, it might be giving us data, the middle of page one or bottom of page one, and it's obviously very different. It can be vastly different at the top of the page, but click-through rate tends to be much higher, and if our conversion rate is strong, we've already identified we've got a strong conversion rate on that keyword anyway. So yeah, now we can say, all right, well, that's our current impression share, that's our current click-through rate. So all that information's in the search impression share report, right? So we're just literally reverse engineering that number to say, right, if 20% is our target number, that's going to mean we're going to need 20 times more clicks at this cost per click. Our budget's going to be X. If that doesn't align with with the customer's goal and the customer's budget, then we need to go back to the drawing board and identify those keywords that we can afford.
Yeah, that is insane. I think the thing that this hinges on, and I appreciate you sharing your agency data with us, is at 10 to 20%. So just to clarify for the audience, and also so I can wrap my brain around this, because I love these kind of calculations, is you're taking a look at the impressions that you're getting, and then you're looking at the search term impression share report, and then determining, there is a column that will tell you, hey, you are, like you said, rank 1, rank 10, etc. And then it'll say, okay, so depending on this rank, this search has X percentage of the impressions. So you can kind of reverse engineer that, say, okay, if this number of impressions is 1%, then I know that the total impressions possible for this particular search is going to be X amount of percent. Yep. And you can do that calculation. And then, so once you have the total amount of impressions, then you can say, okay, my forecasted click-through rate, because obviously not every single impression is going to lead to a click. So you're looking at the top of search click-through rate, and you're saying, okay, based on this, often sometimes you find it's even over 1% or probably 1%, 2%, those. But you should be able to, again, it's as close as you can get to your data, because that's the variable, is how accurate are the numbers are you plugging in. And how accurate your numbers are turns out to how accurate your forecast is going to be. But you would say, okay, so what percentage, if I have 1% of this amount of search terms, that's how many clicks I'm going to have. And then you're coupling that with, okay, so this is my amount of clicks to run on this keyword. And then I also know that this is how much my top of search cost per click is going to be. So then you just multiply clicks times the cost per click you have, and then you have your beautiful, wonderful forecasted ad spend. So yep. I appreciate you sharing that with us.
No, that's cool. That's it. I think it's a level of data that I said, I'm going to guess most sellers wouldn't look at this information in this way. And I think it was, like I said, it was only born out of constantly being asked, how can we increase organic sales? How can we? I think the very first question was, we're spending too much. How can we reduce our tacos? And it's well, there's two ways to reduce tacos, right? One is reduce ad spend, which isn't always the smart move, and the second is increase organic sales. So when you ask what's the organic ranking strategy, it's we used to do giveaways, and then there's no answer. So it was really out of necessity to try and find a way to explain to these clients that this is the reality of what you're asking me to do, and being able to quantify it with numbers, from their own data, not just me saying, oh yeah, it's going to be expensive to rank on that keyword. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's really useful when we're having our monthly calls and trying to come up with a plan. Like, how do we grow this year? We already said sales are pretty stagnant in a lot of categories year on year. Our partners are still seeing 30-40% growth in most cases, not all, but that's because we're always looking at what's the next thing we can do to increase sales, and then just rolling this out each month. We identify where there's maybe some gaps in our ranking, and just keep trying to plug those gaps over and over again. And if it drops off, we can go back, and we've got that data to say this is what it took. That's kind of a good starting point, at least, to revert back to.
Yeah, and this has been insanely great information. Again, I really appreciate you sharing. I agree. Those questions are ones that we find from sellers a lot. A lot of savvy sellers understand I need to spend more to be able to rank the products. So it's not that they aren't okay with that scenario of, maybe investing ad spend. The thing that I find is often the kind of hesitation to do so is how effective, trying to answer the question, how effective is this going to be? And obviously nothing is ever guaranteed, but where can I be relatively certain that if I'm just spending more, because no one wants to just be like, oh yeah, sure, throw ad spend at it and we'll see what happens. Like, that's, as a business owner or any business owner, that's a bit more difficult. So at least, like you said, having a good game plan and at least knowing some basic forecast numbers, variables will work out, cost per clicks vary, conversion rates vary, but you're building it, like you said, off of their own data. So that's as close as you're going to get to a really solid answer before, like you said, before you even go and spend that.
Yeah, and I think that's been a real standout point that all of our clients say, that having that extra level of insight to say, all right, now I'm comfortable putting in this extra ad spend, because we can at least show them what that's likely. Like I said, no guarantees, but we project what it's going to cost in terms of ad spend, and we can, as a result of that, project what that means in terms of sales from ad spend. And assuming that, obviously it depends. ACOS isn't the focus. ACOS isn't the focus when we're trying to rank, but at least it gives us that. It's just plain, right? It's there for everybody to see. This is realistically what's likely to happen. This is the cost per click in your conversion, so we can even almost predict what the ACOS is going to be. So it's not a big shock, when it goes up because the cost per click is so high. So yeah, hopefully people listening find it useful and go and dig into their own reports and run some ranking strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been fabulous. Again, I appreciate the knowledge share. It's always awesome to have people on who are willing to give people some insights into what they can expect or how they can work better in their accounts. So before we go, I'd love for you to share just quickly, if somebody's wanting to get a hold of you or learn more from you, what would be the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, either on the website at sponsoredprofit.com or myself or Laura, my business partner, Laura McCall, on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely put those links down below. So feel free to go check them out. And again, I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.